On Friday, we started our review of basic logic gate behavior and construction. And our first goal for Friday was to match basic logic gates with their canonical expressions. And what we have is a new opportunity. It's kind of an easy button. So if you look inside, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we've done since Friday is tweaked some things in the learning outcomes, and more specifically inside the module in references, you'll notice that there's an opportunity to walk through all of the things that we covered back then. So as a review, so inside the Logic Gate Canonicals folder in Module 3, you'll see the AND standard canonical. And basically, it shows everything that we covered in the same format that we covered it. And I'm hoping that's a useful resource for you. But apart from that, if you back out of here, whoops, let's go one step further. You'll notice there's a canonical summary. And perhaps I should slide that up here. So I wanted to show this to you. If you wanted a condensed format to review so that you could match up the logical behavior with what we covered on Friday, I'm hoping you'll find this is helpful. So this is a summary of each of those Word documents in a single statement. So what we have is an and it's always 0 unless all inputs are 1. And it's represented by one standard canonical, AB. And then NAND is always 1 unless all inputs are 1. It's represented by one reverse canonical. And that's the reverse canonical. It's not the same as this canonical, because this is a standard canonical and this is a reverse canonical. So what we have is a case where you have the mirror image. So the NAND is the mirror image of the AND. And then in the second grouping here, NOR is the mirror image of the OR. And even though it looks like they're the same canonicals, they're not the same canonicals, because the OR is the reverse canonical and the NOR is the standard. So just remember that there's only one case where AND is true. That's when all inputs are true. And so because we're looking at cases that are true, we're using the standard canonical. And I'm hoping that this format will help solidify what we're doing here. And the same way XOR. So tomorrow, as we start our class tomorrow, I'd like to start a matching, like a matching challenge where you're given one of these statements, and the only thing you don't have is which logic gate. So I'll say this logic gate is always 0 unless all inputs are 0, and it's represented by one standard canonical, A tick, B tick. And you should be able to look at the options and say, oh, that's a NOR. And that's the intent of what we're shooting for here. It's good to take out a piece of paper and a pencil, or a whiteboard and a dry erase. or a stylus and a tablet. And that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a stylus and an iPad just to noodle with. And our goal for the day is to basically learn how to draw a compound logic gate that depicts input-output mapping. And what we mean by that is that there's going to be a first logic gate that you draw. There's going to be a next or a third or a fourth. There will be a second or more logic gates that you draw. And you have to take the output of the first logic gate and map it to one of the inputs of the next logic gate. So this is a creative thing. There are some that are pre-made and pre-built, but we want you to know that this is like a palette of oil colors, and you're a painter, and you're like a Rembrandt, and you can choose which logic gates, and you can choose which way to arrange the colors on the palette, on the screen. So I'm going to choose to do a logic gate I'm going to call or and. And I know that's, so or and. And because the first part of that name is or, I'm gonna draw an or. So I'm gonna go ahead and, let's get rid of that. So I'll go back to black. So first thing I'm gonna do is draw the back end of this thing. And I'm gonna have an A and a B input, just for now. And then I'm gonna draw the or. And it has to come to a point. So this point here, right here, it's not rounded like an and. It's going to have an output. And what's most important to understand is that this output is really like a wire. We'll talk about wires in just a second. So if we're dealing with physical components and we want to stitch them together or combine them, the thing that I want you to understand is that just like if we drew 6 different logic gates and gave them all A and B, that would start to get confusing very quickly. But as we're connecting, we want to give the hardware definition language and the hardware simulator a helping hand. We want to cue that environment into some distinctions. And one of the anchors for that distinction is to designate a different name for the outputs of each of the different logic gates, a little differently than just out, because otherwise we have an out, we have ins, and then we have outs, and when we start to write the code, it gets terribly confusing. So remember, one of the first steps of drawing our first logic gate, we can choose to use some common inputs, A and B, and that's okay. And that's what your author does. Your author reuses A and B all the time. But your author calls out a distinction for the output so that we can use W1 as the output for the OR. And essentially, so I'm gonna erase this now and just put W1 because that's a little bit more concise. So I'll just put W1. And now I'm going to draw the AND. So everybody knows that this is a W1, yes? All right, so I guess what I'm going to have to do is come at this like so. And I'm kind of a terrible artist, but I'm working on it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm not a Rembrandt. You don't have to worry about being a Rembrandt. This is input C. And I'm going to make this an AND. And I want you to notice that it is distinctly different because it's rounded. this is the last output. So this could be wire 2. And then overall, so we've got a much bigger, larger outline of this compound logic gate. And I'm not sure how we could draw it differently so that it looks like it's not an and, nor is it a or. But one thing we could do is we could get creative here. So everybody can do this a little differently. And one thing we could do is draw the or inside, but then draw the and on the outside. And what I'm saying is we could put a kind of like a rounded front to this. So we've got a hint of or in there. We could do it in a different color maybe, but you've got this coming out. So the or and logic gate has an A and a B. So in terms of it's helpful. It's helpful to do a truth table next, or to write out the Boolean function. So you'd have like an or, because that's the first thing we're doing here. And we're going to have an A and a B. But then this is the first part. That's the top input here of my and. Then I'm going to put a comma. Then I'm going to put a C. And I can go like that, if it's helpful to use square here. Then I go and. So if I'm stating the Boolean function, you know, I've got this internal part here with A and B that processes first, and it's an or, and it's the first input for another logic gate, which is the and. So this whole part here is W1. Can everybody see what I just did there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I see it.
And that C is the bottom. C is the bottom input, right? C is the bottom input. And I know this is sloppy, right? It's sloppy. But the point is that everybody's better or worse at drawing, but you only get better if you start. And this drawing in this fashion is important because we absolutely want to call out some of the distinctions. And remember, W1 is that first distinction. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to go ahead. I'm going to take a picture of this. So I took a screenshot of that, and I'm going to send that in just a minute. But now I'm also going to stop sharing. So let's share the screen again, and let me show you the wonderful world of breadboards and electronics. So if I go to Google and I search for breadboard transistor and then wires, and that's all I'm doing. Breadboard, transistor, and wires. Everybody with me?
Yes.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do is just look at images. So I'm going to go ahead and look at images. And in the physical world, when you're wiring hardware components, and that's very much like these logic gates that we're talking about with wires coming into and out of. And so back in the day when you were an electronics enthusiast, you would work with these smaller transistors, which were basically logic gates, pretty much logic gates. And you would literally stick in wires, and you would have outputs. Can everybody see this one in particular?
Yes.
It's like you have two wires here at the neck of this one transistor and two wires here at the neck. Now I'm oversimplifying things, but that's kind of like two inputs into a logic gate. And so what I want you to understand is that you have electronic components that you can connect with wires, and you're connecting outputs with inputs. That's the trick. When it comes to the design part of this, the graphical part of this, you have to be able to connect the outputs to the inputs. So I'm going to stop the recording, and I want you right now to draw your own pair of logic gates, and I want you to try to retrace your steps, follow along as much as we just did, right? Start with the first logic gate, come up with a name for your, mix it up, right? And I'd like you to try to draw a picture, and I'll give you about 5 minutes to draw something, and then you can join the class with a smartphone and turn on your camera and show your picture that way. Or if you have a tablet, you can use your stylus and join. I sent myself an email to the tablet, and then with the link for the Zoom session, right? So that's how I got my tablet screen on there. But what I'd like to do is give people a chance to draw something, and to do it now, and then to just share. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be flashy. What I showed you is pretty basic stuff. And there we go. Does everybody see that? There. Long enough for you to grab a screenshot. But I'm also going to erase it in a minute, and I'm going to start with a new one, and I'm just going to start doodling. I'm going to keep drawing for the next 5 minutes. And I'm going to repeat the process that I just did, and I want you to follow along with me, and then we'll share. Okay? Just remember, you're starting with the first logic gate, and you have to make intentional decisions about what your first one's going to be. And then the output of the first one has to be distinguished from being something other than out. And we're going to use W1 for wire 1, just for convention's sake, because that follows along with the examples in your textbook. You don't have to do that. You could have a wire 1, instead of using wire 1, you could say or out, and out. You could name them something different that way, because this is programming and you're not restricted to single letter variables. But for now, just to keep it simple, that's what we're going to do. Has everybody had a chance to grab the screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead back to my yeah. I go back to my drawing option. And I'm going to share the whiteboard. All right. Well, let's do a different one this time. I'm going to do and or. So you could choose or and, do the same thing, or you could do and or. So I'm going to draw the first logic gate. I'm going to try to be a little cleaner this time because I want to be, well, I want to show everybody I'm getting better at this, right? And I'm going to come down here, and I'll actually drop it a little. So I'll say W1. And that's the first input of my or. I'll draw the or, so there's a point. I'll put W2. I'll call this out. So I have an and, but it's kind of hidden behind the or, meaning the or is going to be the last thing that processes the data. So it's the or that in some ways is, it's going to be more visible. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the bigger outline like this. Still going to have a point. But then, like inside, I'm going to do, let me see if I can get a different color here. Where are my colors? Oh yeah, let's do blue. So I'm gonna do something like this. So if you look at the diagram, you get this idea that, well, there's a hint of an and in there because the front of that outer outline is in a different color. I can still use black. I can still use the outer outline. Very prominent, right? I hope everybody's drawing. Hello? Somebody say something.
I finished mine a while ago.
Doctor, can tell I don't finish drawing too.
You did?
Yes.
Yeah, before you said you were doing the and or, I was already doing the and or. So.
Okay. That's cool. That's very cool. I'm glad to hear it. If you've been drawing, you should be close. Yeah, I kind of like this one better. And what I think you're going to see is this progression. And I'm doing this deliberately like this because the more you do it, the better it looks, the better you get at it, the cleaner your result, the more discernible the components, the easier it is to do the truth table, the easier it is to do the Boolean function, right? So what we want to do, I got a screenshot of that now. Does anyone want me to leave this image on the screen a little longer? So you can grab your own screen image, your own screenshot?
Yes, we could. Yes, I want to.
Okay. Tell me when you have your screenshot. You good?
Yeah, good.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't take a picture of mine and I will send it to your email.
That's fine. That would be great. If you would prefer to send me an email with a picture of what you drew, and you just want me to display the pictures, if you send the email and say no name, you can do that right now. Send email right now that says no name. I'll just show the picture and I won't tell you who it is. But if you're proud of your drawing and you want to share your name and you want to say, hey, everybody, look at this, then send me your picture, email me your picture, or you can just share the screen. You can go ahead and just share the screen. And I'm going to wait until more than one person sends an email of their pictures, so we won't know if it's LeQuinn or if it's somebody else, okay? So I haven't shared the screen right now. I'm waiting. But yeah, that's where we are. And I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, go ahead. Share your screen.
I think this should be, which one is being recorded? That's the wrong screen. Come on. Is this the right screen? Is this, can you see the thing or is it something else?
Well, I can.
Yeah, we can see it.
I
Okay,
could
good.
see it.
I thought I shared the wrong screen by accident.
No, I think that's good. That's good.
All right.
Yeah, you nailed it. So it's easy to discern the A and B inputs for AND, the fact that the output for AND is a wire 1, and that it feeds directly into the top input for OR, and the C input comes out of the bottom part of the OR. The outline of the AND and the OR are distinctly different, so it's easy to see that AND has a rounded front, and OR has a pointed front, and that there's wire 2. Okay. So the only other thing that you would like to do is complete the larger, bolder outline of the drawing, because you're going to see in a minute why that's important. That detail is also important because you have another A, B, and a C that comes out of the AND OR. So what we're going to do next, right, let's
And shed.
yeah, go ahead and finish drawing the larger outline around that like I did. Would anyone else care to share their...
Would the larger outline be in the shape of an and, or because I noticed you had like a certain shape for your outline?
That's a great question. Because you're designing this, you decide what you want to do. Do you want it to have an outer shape that's more like the OR, or do you want the outer shape to be more like an AND? And how do you represent the fact that there's another logic gate in there? Do you have like a fainter outline inside of it that's
okay,
like I did? It's all up to you. You could draw a box. You could just make it like a hollow point bullet where it comes out to the edge to the point, but instead of being rounded or instead of being pointed, it's like flat on the tip. You could do that instead. That's another way to do it. But graphically, what you want to do is you want to give some thought to how you can make the interface view of your compound logic gate to be unique and distinctive so that it's not mixed up with other logic gates. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you in just a second. So, is there anyone else that would like to share their diagram?
I done send my logic gate diagram on your email.
Yeah, same, because I drew mine on paper.
Okay. I'll check my email again. Oh yeah, yeah, we've got a bunch in here now. Oh, that's so cool.
So I stopped sharing.
Yeah, yeah, and the order is all different too. So what I'm looking for here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Actually, many more times. We're going to cut it up and then. All right, so we're going to pause it.
Yeah,
No.
you're not
It ain't
sharing.
sharing.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting way to do. So this artist chose to embed an entire internal shape with an entire external shape. Excellent choice. If that's the interface view, you wouldn't show anything inside. So you wouldn't show the W, the X, the Y. You wouldn't show the and or the or, but you would show like the outer two larger outlines, and you'd show W, X, and Y coming out of on the left side. So you'd still want to show the inputs coming out of the outer boundaries, if that makes sense. And that's just something that I'm offering to the artist. Okay, but I like this because that's another way to draw it. And I'm going to show you why we're interested in outlines. So let's see if I can get back into this again. I want to share what's in your textbook. So can everybody see the screen now?
Yes. Hmm.
So you have you have the two kinds of views. You have the implementation or internal view, then you have the interface view. And if you see the interface view, it's no different than the other two ands because, well, there's no different logic gate inside that's built this. So the behavior of the overall compound logic gate, the 3-input and is actually a compound logic gate. Let's repeat that. A 3-input and is actually a compound logic gate. It's two ands linked together, right? What we want to do though is show you this XOR. Can everybody see on the left what the author did? Well, it's not just what the author did. This is what industry does. This is one representation of an XOR. Can everybody see how you can tell there's an OR in there, can't you? How would you, if you look at that outline on the left, how would you know there has to be an OR in that compound logic gate? I mean, is it a
Because of
rounded
its
out?
shape.
Is it a
Because of the
rounded?
OR shape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It has an OR outline. There's a bullet point, right? So it's pointy. It's not rounded on the outside. But you can see on the AB side, there's this extra stuff they chose to draw. And that's how a lot of people in industry show you the interface view of an XOR. If you see that specific shape, even if it's not labeled XOR, you know, oh, that's an XOR. Because there's that double curved line on the left side. There's a double curved line on the left side where AB is. And so, yeah, the OR is the most distinctive behavior because it's the last thing that it's the last thing to process the data, right? But if you look inside here, we have a knot and we have to figure out where the wires are. And so we'll have a W1 and W2 and all that. When we look at HDL, so what's our, let's look at some more drawings. I want to go ahead and look at some more drawings. I'm going to stop sharing then. And give me a second and I'll have another drawing up. Oh yeah, big drawing. So if people take this with a high resolution smartphone, it gets to be a pretty big drawing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. Can everybody see the drawing?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So one thing I would offer to the artist here, if you look at the ands and the ors, one thing you want to do with the right side of the ands and the ors where the outputs are coming is you want to make sure they're not all curved. So if the top one's an and the bottom one's an or, you want to make the bottom or in the lower left corner pointier. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, you labeled them and said and or, but you want the shape to represent. If I don't have the labels, I want to know what I'm looking at. And always looks like a high-powered bullet rifle tip. It's pointy. And always looks like a handgun bullet. It's rounded on the end, right? And so if that's all I have to look at, I can know, oh, that's an or, oh, that's an and. And if I'm looking at a triangle with one input and one output, I always know that's a not. I don't have to guess. That's just how it is everywhere for everybody worldwide. We all have those conventions. But I like the idea that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 inputs that are presenting on the outer part of the drawing. So to me, instead of just having 2 or 3 outputs, you've got all 4. So you have a more interesting design that way. And that's what makes this process so fun. Everybody's going to have a different concept, and everybody's concept is valid. You're going to find out in just a minute. Everybody can work whatever concept they want. I'm going to stop sharing again and pull up another one. Let's see if we have time for one more. And then tomorrow we're going to show you what to do to take that to the HDL and hardware simulator. So stand by just a moment. Aha. All right. Yeah, this was an interesting picture. Right, here we go. Can everybody see?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I would offer the same constructive advice for this artist. I would make the or on the right side a little pointier, right? That's why we want to practice this. So you're going to make the or pointier, but otherwise the and is good. It almost looks like the and is starting to point and the or is rounder, and I'd just flip those and I'd make the or pointier and I'd make the and rounder. And that's what I'd offer here. Let's look at a couple more if we can do that real quickly.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Yeah.
Hang on. No. Oh, there it is. Okay. I like this. We have different inputs besides A and B. That's nice. And it looks like we have a not in between. So one of the things you always want to do is feed. So here's what I would offer to this artist. You always want a not. You always want the output. Always feed the output of a logic gate. Always feed the output of a logic gate into the input of the next logic gate. And if we have this not joining the two outputs, we have an output, we have an input for the not feeding out to the output of an or down below. So the top or into the not is good because the output from the or on top is feeding into the not. It's coming down into that not. But as we come out of the not, it is feeding into an output instead of an input. And so that's one thing that I would offer to this artist. I would say, remember, you always want to run the output of any of the logic gate components, and or and not, into the input of the next one. And if you were to swivel the not up and put it in between the first or and the top input of the and, oh, that would be really cool. And that would be interesting to see how that sucker behaves, because that's a unique design. What would you, I'm trying to think of what this author might call it. Like, not or, well, I mean, you can get creative, but you can say and or not. Because the and is the last thing to process the data that's flowing through this thing, and it's going to, the outline of the interface view will be prominently an and, some kind of and, because that's the last thing to handle the data. You could say and or not. Wouldn't mean one, could be one choice, right? Or it could be and nor, because you got a not with ors, right? That's cool, that's different. And I'm kind of curious to see what that sucker would do with inputs K, L, M, and N. Might get some interesting behavior, logic, in terms of logic. Okay, so we're right at 2 o'clock and we have to clear. I have another class at 2 o'clock, but I wanted to take the time to share. I'm going to go ahead and look at the rest of the drawings and respond to each of your drawings, just as I have here in person, one-on-one, through email. But I will tell you that I'm going to go ahead and post an assignment where you submit another drawing and just work the adjustments that we've been discussing, okay?